Hey folks, Brooks with Character Design Forge here. Just a quick video this week as I'm working to meet a really big client deadline, and you most likely, like a lot of people, are focused on E3 this week. I couldn't be happier about Banjo and Animal Crossing myself. Just as a disclaimer, there's an analogy that I want to use for this video that I only want to use as creative advice, and I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life in any way, so just keep that in mind. This video was inspired by a question that I got from one of you, someone by the name of Jared. He wrote asking for comic advice, but it falls under the visual storytelling and regular storytelling and world building umbrella. Now essentially, Jared talks about writing a comic towards an end that he has in mind, but he keeps adding more and more detail and more lore to the universe that he's creating. And it feels like he'll never be done because it's getting bigger and bigger. He says that it's starting to rival the Fallout games in lore and complexity, which I've heard there's quite a bit of lore in those. So he says that he also keeps adding more and more ideas as he talks to people about his story and puts new twists on things. So his question is, when is too much? Is he doing the right thing? Or is this amount of world building overkill? Now you may find yourself in a similar situation to Jared, and it's definitely a simultaneously exciting and frustrating place to be. And while I don't know enough specifics in anyone's situation to give a definitive answer, I have a counter question that I think can help. Are you in love with your story, or is it puppy love? Now think for a moment about a young teenage girl, perhaps you are her or were her, who loves boys, plural. Now she has crushes, she has all of these new exciting feelings of being in love. Sometimes we call someone like that boy crazy, right? Now are those feelings legitimate? Well, sure. But are they more often than not temporary? Absolutely. It's infatuation, an exciting, idealized version of something. But at the same time, this dear young lady most likely isn't ready for the commitment to grow fat and old with someone through good times and bad with one person. And most likely, they also lack the maturity. So what does this have to do with storytelling? Well, the analogy kind of breaks down at a certain level, as all analogies do, but it's very easy to have a sort of puppy love relationship with stories and ideas. Oftentimes, the initial inception of the idea is the most exciting part. They're all hitchhiking to the destination that you're already headed to, and so we pick them up. We pack it in, we find new things, and new ways to say, wouldn't it be cool if? Now the issue is that that stuff is the really easy part. As difficult as coming up with ideas can sometimes be, it's really the execution that takes a lot longer. It's the harder part. What does it take to accomplish and execute your ideas? Well, it's commitment. There's also a secondary aspect of this that can be a problem. If you don't have a lot of experience, for instance, creating comics, which has several disciplines rolled into one, you have drawing, visual storytelling, writing, sequential art, and you start adding on to your workload in this capacity, it's kind of like building a bridge that isn't structurally sound. The further you extend yourself out, the more likely it will be to collapse. And if you're relatively new to these disciplines and you take years to build up to this gigantic project, for instance, Jared references a game series that's made by teams of hundreds of people. In any case, it's more than just one person's work. It's going to be impossible for you to make it pay off or execute on it. And that can be discouraging. Now that may mean that you become stuck in the idea phase because the next step becomes more and more daunting. So you stick to what works, that new little dose of excitement that comes from adding something new. So I've absolutely been here myself before, and there's a few things that can help. One thing is to really establish what things are actually a story and what things are simply world building. Do you have a central key story with a theme and something to say? Or do you simply have concurrent events, some texture, and tertiary window dressing to a story? The other advice, which I've given before, makes it so you don't throw your whole idea out. That's not really a necessity. But rather, can you bite off a tiny piece of your larger idea? Can you tell an isolated, small in-scope story? Can you take one or two of your characters and turn a paragraph of their backstory into a prequel, or an issue 0 to the bigger thing? Now what happens when you do this is that you get a sense for finishing things, and you'll probably at some point be thankful that you started with something smaller because it always takes longer than you think. You also continue to build your skills, and instead of writing a 12-book series with your beginner's writer's chops, you've written a short story that maybe wasn't that good, but you learned a lot along the way. So hopefully that makes sense. This whole process is a difficult one, and pushing past the idea phase into the execution phase can be the hardest part. So if there's anything I can do to help you, I'd like to be able to. Of course, I have plenty of other videos and resources pertaining to the comic making process and with storytelling. If this video helped, give it a like, potentially share it with someone, and you can keep my forge burning over on patreon.com/bageldenizen. And of course, this month I'm doing the Jobs for Pets commission series, which you can see over on brookeseggleston.com/shop. Thank you so much for watching, and have fun creating.